You've also talked about the need at the enterprise to modernize app development, that the expectations that we all have relative to consumer technology has reset the expectations for enterprise technology, and there's often a disconnect between those. Talk a bit about how you foresee some of the improvements that might be afoot relative to app development as well.
Sure. And I think the divide between consumer and enterprise has been talked about a lot. But I do think we, as CIOs, as leaders, need to be more intentional and almost redefine here's the critical attributes an app should have at a minimum. And unless it has those, we're not ready to use it. We're not ready to roll it out. And when I think about that list of attributes, it would be AI driven search. So Google like search embedded in the app, AI embedded in all the workflows and machine learning, where it's not some after the fact thing that happens over in some corner with a bunch of data scientists. AI and ML present as you're using the app. Another concept could be, chatbots, virtual agents as the primary mechanism of interfacing with the app, as opposed to what most apps are today within the enterprise, which is 4 or 5 screens, drop downs, text boxes where you're filling in information. Why can't I just talk to an app? Why can't I just type in a natural language? Why do I have to follow this structure that doesn't feel very human or very natural? And then obviously built with DevSecOps principles so you could rapidly iterate on it. And that's what we've done internally here at ServiceNow for our own IT organization. We said, here's the attributes of what we're going to call an app. And the biggest challenge with any change is the human part of the change. So we're very focused on making sure all of our app dev folks truly understand those critical attributes. And for all the future apps that we do build, we start to show those things.
Well, speaking of development, a trend that is certainly on the rise, certainly during this period especially, has been low code, no code development, the whole concept of the citizen developer as well, concepts that I know that you have embraced. And I'd love to understand from you, again, your vision relative to these topics. How do you, as CIOs, are perhaps on earlier rungs of the ladder towards maturity relative to these concepts? First of all, I'd love your kind of definition of them and the value prop that you see, but also how you counsel your fellow peers as chief information officers to incorporate this to a greater degree into the way in which they do things.
Yeah, I think with low code, no code, we're at another inflection point where it's revitalized or reinvigorated, whatever term one might want to use. Because when I think back, we all probably don't have the greatest memories about the Lotus Notes sprawl. Perhaps it was the SharePoint sprawl. Maybe it may have been called tech debt, where the movement took off, but it didn't really yield results in the way we wanted it to. And then I fast forward to today's situation where the appetite for digital transformation, for driving speed, driving productivity, a better employee and customer experience is insatiable. And I think it would be prudent to make an assumption that the central IT department is not going to be able to satisfy all the demand. So that's one factor contributing to this revitalization. The second is, I think if you look at the workforce entering our companies today, coming out of college, they're a lot more technology adept than prior. They grew up with technology natively. And so they can embrace low code, no code in a much easier way than perhaps prior. But I do think low code, no code has to be rolled out. I think that's a given to improve the speed at which software is developed, not only within IT, but also outside of IT. I think, but it has to be done with guardrails. And I think central IT still has to play a role. I talked earlier about risk management. We can never let low code, no code get us into a bad spot with cyber risk or data risk or privacy risk, all those things that are critical and there for a reason. So with guardrails, as I like to call it, and what we've rolled out here at ServiceNow, it's also not throwing citizen developers into the deep end of the pool. You may recall that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Phone a friend. So phone central IT if you get stuck. Well, no one's phoning anybody anymore, chat, message, whatever it is. But so we've rolled out the framework. We've been pretty successful with it. And it's surprised me a bit, some of the apps that people are developing. And going back to that modern apps concept, there was an individual, non-technical in the company, that was getting inundated with the same kinds of questions from our field organizations every week. And they wanted to do something about it. They wanted to make work better for themselves. But the app they created was a virtual agent app. Nobody told them that they had to do that. Nobody asked them, hey, could you please try this new modern apps thing that Chris cares about a lot? But they just did it. And I just think it's a sign of what's to come, because people are going to build what's easiest and what's most useful for them and for their constituents to interact digitally with them.